Welcome back to the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. I'm Catherine Gordon, your host. Today's topic is fat shaming, what I've learned. It happened to me. Just a couple of weeks ago, I put up a video and I got one of those questions, and it was, why are you still fat? I've been doing carnivore, I'm 63 and I'm at 8% body fat. And I thought, why in the world am I getting this? What is the purpose of this? Especially because I know from a scientific point of view, I'm actually not fat. I'm at a normal weight, a normal size, and a very healthy waist circumference. So what is going on? I've actually been interested in this topic for quite some time. Back in December of 2017, the president of the board of directors of the Miss America pageant was dismissed, and Dick Clark Productions stopped producing the Miss America pageant because this guy had sent a series of emails that were morally shaming and also physically shaming, fat shaming Miss America contestants and former winners. And I remember thinking, what in the world is going on that this guy is getting dismissed from this very big organization, losing all kinds of money, all kinds of prestige over fat shaming and moral shaming, shaming of any kind. Why would you take that risk? Why would you do that? I'd like to talk to you about the history of fat shaming and how I got interested in it. It all started for me back in 2013, and it started with Maria Kang. Do you remember who that was or who that is? She was the mom who said, "What's your excuse?" Famous photograph. She's got 3 young children. She's got an incredibly beautiful body. She's very lean, and she's asking, "What's your excuse?" And there was a great deal of publicity. She got a lot of publicity over, how can you say this about young moms? How can you say, look at me, I'm exercising, you're not. Why aren't you exercising? Why don't you have a body like mine? She got a good deal of blowback. So there's a risk in that, correct? You put out something that says, hey, why aren't you hot like me? And you're going to get some negative feedback. So there was Maria Kang back in 2013. Then just a couple of years later, in 2015, we had Nicole Arbour with Dear Fat People. Beautiful blonde Nicole, wild, very vibrant comic actress talking about fat shaming and talking about dear fat people and just really, going after them and like, no, you're fat and you got to wake up and do what's right, with the caveat of, hey, I'm only telling you this because you care and I'm only telling you this for your health. Let's keep going forward. So the next one was Bill Maher, just a couple of months ago, and his was, fat shaming doesn't need to end, it needs to make a comeback. What in the world is going on? And so the blowback that Bill Maher got is lots of publicity saying, how dare you, why don't you have any compassion? And then James Corden answering him on his show. So why do it? And then finally, the one that really got me to dig in, to look at the research and to make this video was one from medical doctor, and this one was obesity, America's self-inflicted pre-existing condition. And this is from a medical doctor who is representing this idea that we need to actually start doing a surcharge for people who are overweight for their insurance, that there should be an added tax on anyone who is overweight or obese who is seeking insurance. Now, why is that such a bad idea? Well, I'll tell you why it's a bad idea. And really, the medical doctor should know this. All you have to do is go online and Google, ask Dr. Google, is there any research that demonstrates that there's any benefit to fat shaming? Any research at all that demonstrates that shaming people gets them to go work out and eat better? No. As a matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. What all of the evidence shows, all of the evidence that I found, dozens of studies, and you know me, I like to link the studies in my show notes so you can go and read them yourself. They simply don't work, and they actually make things worse. Here we go. Fat shaming linked to greater health risks. And I think that what's fascinating about this particular article and the studies that we see is that when you study people who have been shamed, they get fatter they do less exercise, they don't just get heavier, they get more heart disease, they get more depression. Now you may say, well, maybe they're getting more heart disease and more depression because they're fat to begin with or because they're obese. Nyahaha. But the reality is that what we see is, and I experienced it, Dr. Sean Baker experienced it, is that even people of normal weight are getting fat shamed. What happens to people of normal weight or people who are slender when they get fat shamed? Guess what? They get heavier too. So it's really amazing when you take these studies and they actually control for beginning weight. The people who are being studied aren't just people who start out clinically overweight or clinically obese. Some of these people are actually normal, some of them are slender, some of them are even underweight. And it's the same across the board. And one of the scientific explanations for that could be quite simply cortisol, that it raises stress, raises cortisol, and that there is kind of a cascade of hormonal changes that make people feel ashamed, internalize shame, and it makes them avoid healthy behaviors. I'd like to talk about internalization for a moment. There were groups who experienced shaming who didn't have as many negative effects, and the difference is whether they internalized it, whether they took it in and said, this is my fault, I am a bad person, and that makes them isolate themselves. And I'd like to also touch for a moment on the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt being that there's some behavior that you've done, there's a particular event that you can change, that you can say I'm sorry for, that you can make atonement for, and then move on and change. Whereas shame, especially internalized shame, is more about who you are as a person, and it's intrinsic. Here's something else I discovered that was just amazing. Shame is such a bad thing. It's such a bad idea because not only does it make people sick, it can also make them aggressive. People who internalize shame, a lot of times what you'll see, and I'm sorry if this is stereotypical, is that women tend to internalize shame and retreat, isolate, hurt themselves, whereas sometimes men, young adolescents, they end up getting aggressive, externalizing the shame, saying, how dare you people make me feel this way, and very often can act out in a violent way. And so there's just no good reason to do it. Let me take an example remember my story of back in 2008 where I was being asked if I was my son's grandmother? So I wasn't really ashamed of that. That didn't create shame. Those people weren't shaming me. They weren't coming up to saying, like, wow, lady, you are fat. Why don't you go on a diet? No, they were simply saying, oh, hey, is that your grandson? He's so cute. So there was no shame in it, but what I realized is that, wait a minute, something that I am doing is making me have an identity that is not my identity. And I said, no, I am going to stand up and take on the identity that I wish to have. Now, the other thing that happened that made a huge difference is that at that particular time, I was online and I was looking for a new training program. I had found turbulence training, and I found pictures of women like me who had transformed their bodies. And I got connected with a group of people who were dealing with the same issues I was dealing with, and they were compassionate, they were kind, because one of the foundations of Craig's program was, and still is, you can still get it, although he's moved on to personal development, that one of the foundations of the program was social support. So if you get into a program because somebody has shamed you, if you can get into a group of people that are saying, darn it, I want to do these things in order to be healthy and happy and to develop a happy life, that you can get support from them. And one of the things that was truly, truly crucial in my transformation, and also in maintaining this 70-pound weight loss for more than 10 years, is continuing to reach out to people through social media, through support groups, reaching out to people who have both done what I did and who want to do the same thing. And actually, that was the reason that I became a personal trainer and that I opened Gordon Studio, was to share this experience with other women and men. And it was really amazing, because what we found is that when we all got together and we worked together, we got healthier. And even if sometimes I would do a transformation challenge and clients wouldn't lose weight, but they'd lose a dress size or two, and they'd always lose off of their waist circumference. So sometimes it wasn't even the weight, it was just simply these improvements in health. So another thing that's very important is getting connected with other people who want to do the same thing so that they can support you. But I do want to talk a little bit more about solutions at the end. Now, I want to address this idea of what is going on with the shaming. There are consequences to shaming, so to being a shamer. The president of the Miss America board, he lost his job. They lost their contract with Dick Clark Productions. Why would you do that? Bill Maher got a lecture from James Corden. Why would he want to do that? Nicole Arbor went on the View, and they really took her to task. Maria Kang, the same thing. All kinds of people saying, hey, knock it off. What's wrong with you? So why in the world are they doing it? Shame doesn't work. But guess what? Shame sells. In all of these cases, I'll give you an example. Maria Kang just recently had an appearance on Fox showing how she's looking today, a number of years later, and talking about how she's changed her motto from what's your excuse to what's your reason. Even with all the blowback that she got, all the consequences that she got, now she's on Fox, she's selling books, she's selling programs. Shame sells. Nicole Arbor. One of those shocking things that I noticed is I went on Nicole's YouTube channel and I thought, well, I'm just going to see how many views she usually gets and what effect that this has had. So her typical videos, she has a number of videos that have over 1 million views. And she has quite a few videos that have around 100,000 views. But guess what? Her fat shaming video, it has over 14 million views. Now that would be a pretty big incentive, even if shaming doesn't help from a moral standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a psychological standpoint. It helps from a marketing standpoint. So there you have it. And Bill Maher, certainly huge ratings, all kinds of publicity coming from doing a fat shaming segment. And it makes me wonder, now that I think about the guy who fat shamed Dr. Sean Baker, I wonder, because I will admit it, I went and I read that and I watched that and I'm like, gosh, who is this guy? And I went and I watched his video. So there is a payoff. There is a payoff from this kind of behavior. And if I may tell a personal story about that, one of the reasons that I stepped away from the turbulence training world and stepped away from the program that I used to be promoting is that the marketing expert that was hired for that program decided to change the name from Home Workout Revolution to 6 Minutes to Skinny. And I realized I don't want to be the spokeswoman for a program called 6 Minutes to Skinny. And what's really interesting is that back when I did a few videos for it, because I was doing the program, it was just simply a name change. Those were the videos that I had that got the most views. And when I started to rebuild this channel to really commit to regular posting and building my audience, one of the things that I did is I deleted the 6 Minute to Skinny videos. I deleted 70,000 views, but I wanted to, if I was going to grow this channel, Sugar Freedom, I wanted this channel to be about what I believe in from a scientific, from a moral, from a compassion standpoint. And I realized I was going to have to give up all of those views. And to give you an idea of what a big deal that was, this channel, without those views, just recently passed 100,000 views. So it took more than 1.5 years to gain those views back. So it was a very big deal. But I could not have a program on my channel talking about this concept of 6 minutes to skinny, because this drive to try to get skinny in and of itself may raise cortisol, make us feel worse about ourselves, and make us less likely to get to the gym. So if all of this is going on, if fat shaming is going on because the shame actually leads to revenue, and it's like, money talks, If people are going to continue to do this because it gets them views and because it generates revenues and it generates sales, what are we going to do? Well, there's a couple things that we can do is make connections to people who are loving and kind and supportive and people who have been there and people who are still there. One of the things that I do is that I really think about who are the men and women, who are the people that I admire most in the world. And when I think of all of these men and women, and particularly when I think about the women, my admiration for them really has nothing to do with their physical appearance. And what makes me inspired by somebody is rarely their physical appearance. It's what they do. And in my own case, the reason I wanted to lose the weight was I wanted to be who I was. I wasn't ready to look like a grandmother yet. But also, I had been choreographing a dance and I'd been doing grand jetés, and I came down and I broke my foot in 4 places. And what I realized is if I wanted to dance and if I wanted to be a choreographer, I was going to have a lot more luck at that and do a lot better if I went ahead and got healthy and strong and leaner, quite frankly, because the broken foot was very painful, and it made me realize that if I didn't get healthy, I would not be able to choreograph and to dance. Now, there were a couple of other things, so what do we do instead? Here they are. Okay, so be aware that the purpose of shaming may be economic and it has nothing to do with you. So it's a little bit of like a mafia thing. It's like, it's not personal, it's just business. So the shaming, there's a really good chance that it's not personal at all. The people who are doing it, they don't think you're fat, you're not fat. They are doing it because it gets them the attention, the views, and it drives the revenue that they want. It could be that it has absolutely nothing to do with the way you look at all. It's just business, so don't take it personal, which I know is hard to do. Once again, get together with people who are compassionate and fun and loving. Find your social support. There's even, for example, if you are dealing with compulsive overeating, or you're dealing with obesity, or even the opposite, there is Overeaters Anonymous. You can get online and look for them, look for a meeting. There are people at these meetings who their entire person is compassion. Their purpose is compassion and acceptance, so that is out there as well. And I think also hospitals and doctors' offices are starting to get these groups together to say, hey, let's actually talk about this and let's deal with this in a compassionate and a scientific way. All right, so there it is. And then finally, understand if you can just get the understanding that one of the things that shaming does is it gets people to isolate and to stop getting out and getting some exercise. If you could realize that is what's going on, you've got issues with cortisol and serotonin, and if the conscious part of your mind could get some awareness going and saying, okay, this is what's happening. I'm going to accept my body as it is now, and I'm going to go ahead and get to the grocery store or the market or the butcher and buy the healthy food, and I'm just going to get to the gym, or I'm going to get to the space in my house where I do some healthy movement that I enjoy. And I want to leave you with, as we talk about the healthy movement that you enjoy, number one, what I had to do to get into the gym and to transform my body way back was I had to have acceptance. I had to accept the body that I had at that moment. Do your best to accept the body that you have now, get with a group, talk to some people, and then take that acceptance and go ahead and take action. But this is important, at self-selected intensity. I've talked about that in other videos. One of the things we know is that not all exercise is created equal. Not all of it is effective, but that the most effective exercise is done at self-selected intensity. That means that you want to do it. You're not forcing yourself to keep going. It is your choice. Well, there it is. And I really was amazed at the research that I did on this. I hope that you will look into some of the research and that what you will take away from this, compassion for yourself, acceptance of yourself, and compassion for and acceptance of others. Like, share, subscribe, especially share if you know somebody who might benefit from understanding how shaming hurts and how acceptance helps. Have a wonderful day.